Hi everyone, welcome to another video, and today we're going to be going through the last topic of Cambridge IGCSE, which is 3.7 Environmental Risks of Economic Development. So without further ado, let's get straight in. So there are some key terms that you need to know, and the first one is soil erosion. And soil erosion is the wearing away of the top layer of soil. And desertification is the increased presence of desert like conditions in semi-arid areas. Okay, so these are the two definitions that you need to know for this topic, and now we're going to be looking at the causes of soil erosion and desertification. So some causes include deforestation, and this is because removing trees might reduce interception, and therefore the soil is exposed to more rainfall and wind conditions, so therefore the soil will be able to erode faster and the wind will be able to blow the soil, which makes the soil more bare. Next is overgrazing, and this can increase soil erosion and desertification because removing vegetation cover can remove the wind and water protection from the soil, so there will be more surface runoff and wind that will blow the soil across the landscape, and that also will make the soil more bare. The next cause is population increase, and this is because this increases the demand for food, and this can lead to over-cultivation of crops and overgrazing of the land because more space where this intensive farming will increase, and therefore this causes soil erosion. Next is climate change, and this is because changing weather patterns such as increasing floods and an increase in tropical storms and droughts can all lead to an increase in soil erosion because the soil will be less adhesed to each other and will spread more easily. So that is another factor that affects soil erosion and desertification. Okay, so now I'm going to be looking at the sustainable management strategies that can be used against soil erosion and desertification. So the first one is afforestation. And this is because this increases interception, and it also causes, and the roots of trees also causes the soil to bind together, and therefore less soil erosion can take place. The next solution is to provide education about sustainable farming practices. And by doing this, farmers are more aware of the effects of soil erosion, and therefore they may be careful with the grazing and the cultivating of their land. And in some cases, they may also reduce the intensivity they farm on the area of land that they're given. So the next one is to recycle water, and this reduces the abstraction of water needed from freshwater aquifers such as underground in the soil, and therefore less soil erosion will take place because the soil will have more moisture if there are aquifers with water inside them. Next is to create environmental zones, and by this Governments may create zones in which the environment can't be altered, and this can help to maintain healthy ecosystems and can also preserve habitat and biodiversity. Next is to rotate grazing land, and this can lead to less overgrazing, and therefore there'll be less soil erosion. Okay, so now we're going to be looking at the enhanced greenhouse effect. So these layers here, they represent the atmosphere. So the light blue and the slightly darker blue layers. And obviously this represents the Earth, and then here is the sun. And basically what happens in the enhanced greenhouse effect is that these arrows here from the sun to the Earth are shortwave radiation, and this passes through the atmosphere into the Earth, which causes the Earth to heat up. So this is short wave radiation. And usually this would reflect off the ground and into the atmosphere. But because there's a thick atmosphere here caused by the release of greenhouse gases like methane, carbon dioxide, water vapor, etc., these the long wave radiation that gets released from the Earth's surface actually gets trapped within the atmosphere. So long wave radiation gets trapped, and this can lead to an increase in the temperature because it's more long wave radiation that's trapped within the atmosphere. And that is basically what the greenhouse effect is. So it will be reflected back into the atmosphere, as you can see in this diagram. So now we're going to be moving to the impacts of global warming. And one impact is the increase in heat strokes and respiratory diseases. This is because increased temperatures by global warming can cause the body to heat up and therefore make the individual more prone to health effects and diseases such as heat strokes, and they may overheat. So the next impact is the crop type may need to be changed. And this is because a certain crop type might not be able to grow in the new conditions that it finds itself in due to global warming. So therefore, farmers have to change the type of crop they're growing, which can also affect their income, as the crop they're growing may be worth less when they're sold. The next impact is the loss of natural habitat and biodiversity. And this is because there will be an increase in animal mortality due to what I said above about the heat strokes and respiratory diseases, and therefore this also decreases the biodiversity of the many different ecosystems. Another impact is flooding in low-lying areas, and this is because increased average global temperature caused by global warming causes ice glaciers to melt, and therefore causes the sea level to rise, and this can place adverse effects on low-lying areas, and therefore can have negative impacts on the societies that live in those areas. And finally, there will be an increase in coral bleaching, and this is because of the warmer sea level. So coral reefs may not be able to survive that well, and therefore they may bleach. So now we're going to be looking at pollution, and there are four main types of pollution. So there's air pollution, water pollution, visual pollution, and noise pollution. And we're going to be looking at the causes and impacts of each. So air pollution is basically when the air is contaminated with toxic particulates, so carbon dioxide, methane, sulfur dioxide, etc. And some causes for this could be forest fires. It can also be caused by fossil fuels burning. It can also be caused by industrial waste produced by factories. And it can also be caused by vehicles powered by petrol. And also open stoves, which are more common in LICs, can also increase air pollution. And there are also many impacts of air pollution. So respiratory diseases, heat strokes. So these are both effects on the health of individuals. And trees may shed leaves, and this is because air pollution may be toxic to trees, and this can cause a detrimental effect on them, causing them to lose their leaves. It can also cause water acidification. So the carbon dioxide in the air gets dissolved in seawater and can have a negative impact on aquatic ecosystems. And also, it can also cause acid rain, which is produced from sulfur dioxide produced by factories. And this can also cause the corrosion of steel buildings, etc. So now I'm going to be looking at water pollution. So the causes of water pollution is plastic waste into oceans, and also oil spills, which contaminate the vicinity of the area where the oil spill has occurred, and also fertilizers and pesticides cause eutrophication. And basically what eutrophication is, it's basically when dead zones are created as a result of increased algae growth in bodies of water. So ecosystems cannot function properly and they therefore die out. Next is radioactive waste, and this mainly comes from nuclear power plants. And finally, industrial waste can also be a cause of water pollution because it can be dumped inside bodies of water and can therefore contaminate the water. So we're going to be looking at the impacts of water pollution. So one of them is the damage to aquatic ecosystems and habitats. It can also reduce supply of fresh water, and also reduces the supply of for use in domestic circumstances, such as just general drinking water for hydration or cooking and heating up food. The next impact is less water for irrigation, and this can lead to less crops being grown and can therefore harm the agricultural industry in a country. The next is the spreading of water-borne diseases. And finally, it can also cause the death of wildlife. Okay, so now I'm going to be looking at visual pollution. So the causes of this are concrete buildings because they do not look aesthetically pleasing in some areas. Waste dumped on streets, and also neon signs can also cause visual pollution because people may not like how neon signs lit up on streets and the lack of nature embedded within urban areas. Also energy generating plants, and also tangled power lines in cities. Okay, so now we're going to be looking at the impacts of visual pollution, and this can cause more stress and anxiety. It can also increase addiction to bad habits. It can also decrease the quality of life. Visual pollution can also cause distractions, and this can lead to fatal motor accidents on the road. And finally, it can have a negative impact on the economy. Okay, so now we're going to be looking at finally noise pollution, which is the last of pollution you need to know. So the causes of this are industry because of the manufacturing of goods, and it can also be caused by nightlife. And by nightlife I refer to bars and clubs where people usually party, etc. It can also be caused by spinning wind turbines. And also from transport, such as cars and planes. So those living near airports, for example, may be affected from lots of noise pollution. And it can also be caused by the construction of buildings. So now we're going to be looking at the impacts again of noise pollution, and again stress and anxiety increases when there is noise pollution. There also may be sleep disturbance, and this can also have a negative impact on the productivity of an individual, which can overall have a negative impact on the economy because the population might not be as productive. Next is the hearing loss due to the loud noises, and it can also cause high blood pressure. And finally, it also scares wildlife. Okay, so now we're going to be looking at resource consumption and the government strategies and individual strategies that can be used to prevent resource consumption. So some government strategies are to install solar panels, and this can be done on buildings, and By doing this, they can increase the amount of energy that they're receiving, but more importantly, solar panels are non-renewable source. They're renewable source of energy. So this makes the overall building and the ecological footprint more green. And also petrol should be taxed, so tax petrol, and this can discourage people from driving. So this leads to less resource consumption of fuel. The next is to implement charging stations for electric cars, and this can reduce resource consumption because the government is persuading the use of electric cars within cities, so therefore less resources will be used, such as fuel that comes from petrol, etc. And also invest in renewable energy, and this can be in the form of wind, solar, tidal, etc. And this also increases the lessens the environmental impact of the distribution of electricity across the country, and therefore reduces resource consumption. And the last one, therefore, is to charge drivers that drive in the CBD. So CBD is Central Business District, and by charging drivers, this decreases their one. And by doing this discourages them from driving into the city because they'll have to pay more tax in order to do so. So this can therefore reduce their resource consumption. And now we're going to be looking at the individual strategies to reduce water consumption. So the first one is to use public transport. And this is because if people use public transport, then there'll be less demand for fuel in cars as less people are using them. And this can also conserve the limited resources we have. The next is to reduce, reuse, and recycle. So by this I mean reusing organic products or products that you might not need anymore, and just applying all these terms, so reducing them, reusing them, or recycling them. And this can help to conserve the resources we have. The next is to use energy efficient domestic appliances. And next is to compost food and garden waste, and this is particularly useful in gardening and growing crops or plants, because the food that is not eaten can be used to increase the fertility of soil, and therefore the food does not go to waste. And finally, wash clothes less often, and this reduces the water consumption of a household, and therefore conserves resources and reduces the resource consumption. Okay, so the case study you need for this topic is one economically active area, and for this case study you need to know 3 place-specific causes and its environmental impacts. 3 effects that the economic activity in this area has on the environment, and 3 strategies to reduce its environmental impact. So that's it for today's video. I really hope you guys enjoyed these series of videos covering Cambridge IGCSE, and good luck for your exams. Bye.